All right, we're live. Robin, like to kick us off?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm Robin Boyle. I'm in the energy office here in Montana. The state energy office is housed in DEQ here. I know they're in different offices around the country. We're here today to talk about the bill that's being passed at the federal level. And Sam, did you want me to give an introduction as far as just myself or the meeting? And
I think just talking about a little bit about, some of your thoughts on equity in the IIJA would be great.
Oh, absolutely. So here in Montana, we have kind of a unique situation. Montana is a huge state, but pretty much all of Montana is considered rural. So essentially most of Montana would be considered under our lens disadvantaged communities. We also have several tribal nations here in Montana. We have 8 different tribal nations. And with this funding that's coming in, we really want to focus on the equity piece of it. It's very important to us, something that we've been researching and looking into, obviously, prior to this coming in. But with Justice 40 being a part of the bill, we really want to focus on that. So we're in the planning phase here in Montana, lots of things in the works. But the idea is to really, of course, hit to serve underserved communities. And we're really hoping that we can come up with a grant program. There's going to be several different programs going on, but one of the things we think we can do to help is have some sort of a grant program, or if we do another revolving loan fund, we can do that with more flexibility, lower interest rates. But those are some of the things that we're kind of tossing around here. Eddie, you can go ahead and.
Hello, everybody. I'm Eddie Trevino. I'm the director of the Texas State Energy Office. Never does a day go by these days without Justice 40 being a part of the topic of conversation, particularly with us with the upcoming annual funding grant application, as well as the IIJA or bill, whichever term you all use to reference the infrastructure. All of our proposals that are being submitted do have a component of 40% of the benefits going to underserved communities. We're like every other state in that, how do you define what the underserved communities are? And until we get guidance, we have some of those communities identified by the governor, and we're going to follow that guidance as well. We're also working closely with the Council of Governments. They're going to be our collection points of information for identifying needs for underserved communities and encouraging any participant who wants to participate in whether it's the annual program or the infrastructure program to start working with the Council of Governments as well. And with limited resources like every other state has, we're finding that might be the most effective way to get the word out and work with the communities. With respect to our revolving loan programs, yes, we're just like everybody else and having that need and following the same process. So at this stage, we have panelists that are going to join us and share their expertise. I'm going to introduce, Robin and I are going to tag team on the introductions here for the bios of who our panelists are. Ann Arquette Niederberger has been with Energy since 2014, following an international career in climate research, policy, and consultant. She currently serves as Vice President for Market Development and oversees the company's emerging opportunities, thought leadership, governmental affairs functions, and is passionate about finding ways to drive an equitable clean energy transition with an emphasis on the residential sector.
Sorry about that. The lights turned off in my room. Energy efficiency, that's what we're going for, right? So our next panelist after Ann is going to be Miriam Jaffe-Block. She's the senior manager at the California Alternative Energy and Advanced Transportation Financing Authority, where she oversees the GoGreen Financing suite of energy efficiency programs. Under the leadership, the programs are expanding to offer decarbonization options to more customers, financing at the point of sale for online efficient appliance purchases, and on-bill repayment feature.
And our third panelist is Chris Cole. He's the Director of Energy and Climate Equity at the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. Chris also represents NYSERDA on the New York State Climate Justice Working Group and works to implement climate justice provisions of the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. He plays a pivotal role in aligning policy and resources to advance the state's energy affordability and equity goals. So I'm going to turn the floor over to Ann. Ann, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Eddie. I just wanted to take a few minutes to set the stage here, provide a little bit of context for what you're going to see afterwards. I wanted to call out the U.S. long-term strategy to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050, which I'm sure all of you are familiar with. But specifically for the building sector, this climate strategy says that the priority is really to increase the sales share of clean and efficient electric appliances and to ensure equitable access to efficient appliances. And this is really what we're going to be talking about here today, what states can do to actually make this a reality. And just to provide a little bit of data why that strategy is focusing on efficient electric appliances, this is a recent study that was conducted by the Brattle Group, which quantified the relative shares of contributions to greenhouse gas emissions reductions out to 2030. And as you see here, efficient products, and this includes both gas and electric, but electric is by far the bigger share. They account for more than half of the greenhouse gas reduction potential, much larger than either rooftop solar or electric vehicles, and even larger than both combined. So that's why this focus on helping people make better buying decisions on their own is so important from a greenhouse gas perspective, and also gets forgotten. Certainly not something that's been tackled from an equity perspective in the past. So with that, Miriam, I will pass to you to talk about GoGreen Home.
Great, thank you, Ann. And you're going to keep running the slides for me?
Yes, I am. Mm-hmm.
And thank you, Ann, for connecting me with NASEO, and to everyone at NASEO for inviting me to be here. So I oversee what we call the California Hub for Energy Efficiency Financing, or the CHEEF. And our goal is to leverage private capital for behind the meter investments in existing buildings. And we run programs in 3 sectors: residential, multifamily, and small business. And we're working in support of California's climate and energy savings goals, which are not substantially different than the goal Ann was just showing, but maybe a little bit ahead of where the US is, but particularly trying to double energy efficiency savings in existing buildings by 2030. Okay, next slide. So I'm not actually with the Energy Commission, which I think would probably be our state energy office equivalent. So I'll sort of explain how we're structured. So I work for a state financing authority called the California Alternative Energy and Advanced Transportation Financing Authority. And we're actually housed in the state treasurer's office. And our role is really to use some ratepayer or public capital to really leverage private capital towards the state's energy efficiency and climate and greenhouse gas reduction goals. We're also a public rulemaking agency. We issue regulations, and we're accustomed to managing credit enhancement type vehicles to leverage private capital. So we were asked by the California Public Utilities Commission to administer the CHEEF and the GoGreen financing programs. And so the California Public Utility Commission oversees, or they are the regulatory agency that regulates the investor-owned utilities. And the funding for our program comes from public purpose program funds collected by the investor-owned utilities from their ratepayers, which sort of explains the Public Utility Commission's involvement. And then we use the term GoGreen financing as the public facing platform and name and kind of brand and website of our program. So it's a little bit complicated because it's government, but that gives you an idea. Okay, so next slide. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our GoGreen Home program and what we call our standard loan product, which is basically credit union loans for customers doing energy projects, has been around for a bit over 5 years. The average loan size tends to be about $17,000, and customers will borrow funds to install HVAC equipment, a lot of air sealing insulation, cool roofs, and windows. And so what we do with GoGreen Home and at CAPA is we provide lenders with a credit enhancement in the form of a loan loss reserve, and this allows them to pass on benefits to the customers. The 4 benefits that we see are longer loan terms, lower rates, broader credit approvals, and giving customers access to larger amounts of money to borrow. And the graphs on the right are really, really small, but what you see on the top graph is that the average customer taking out a 60-month loan through a GoGreen Home lender ends up saving over $2,000 in interest versus what they would have paid to that credit union if they had walked in off the street. And then the bottom graph shows the difference in monthly payment amounts versus having to pay back a loan within a 60-month time frame versus extended terms. So most banks and credit unions offering an unsecured credit product will not provide financing for more than 60 months unsecured. But through our program, lenders are able to go out to 15 years. So that really reduces the dollar amount of the monthly payment by several $100s and makes doing a heat pump upgrade feasible for a homeowner. All right, so next slide. So at some point, a couple of years ago, one of the individuals we work with from the Public Utility Commission said to us, wouldn't it be great if customers could use GoGreen financing to purchase equipment online as they were checking out? And we thought, what a great idea. And then not that long after, we were approached by NRV, and NRV holds the contract for running several of the utilities' online marketplaces in California. And so NRV approached us about offering GoGreen financing as customers were buying equipment from these utility marketplaces. We knew that these instant online approvals would be a challenge for our credit unions that have a much more traditional and regulated underwriting practice. It's very hard for them to do instant. So we suggested to NRV that we needed a fintech partner, and NRV was able to bring the financing partner on board. And one was able to enroll in our program, subject to our regulations. They were able to make use of our credit enhancement to offer loans to customers with credit scores all the way down to 580 and a flat rate 60-month term of around 9%. So this is much lower than what customers would pay using credit cards or another kind of online lender like an Affirm or a Klarna. And in terms of the desire to do this as the state, we wanted to keep current with the fact that more and more energy efficiency or more and more energy equipment and appliances are being bought online. And when those purchases happen, we want them to be efficient. We also really liked the idea of making the program benefits accessible to tenants who are much more likely to buy appliances for their homes rather than install insulation. And we had seen not surprisingly, we see very low participation rates from tenants with our standard loans. So we think that this product really complements what we're offering with the larger loans. These are microloans up to $5,000. We did make some changes to the program regulations to allow for that instant online approval and flexible underwriting. We removed the requirement for a contractor enrolled in our program to install the equipment, since NRV is offering installation services online. And what we've seen is that this product has really reached customers with lower credit scores. So it almost looks sort of the opposite of who's accessing our larger standard loans, as we see a lot of customers in that 580 to 640 bucket, meaning this is really likely the only option for these customers to get a decent rate and buy their equipment online. We are currently available in SoCal Gas territory, and the SoCal Edison Marketplace is going to launch with Enervian One later this quarter. We're super excited about that because that will really offer the ability to support customers who are electrifying and putting in heat pump water heaters and things like that. So I'll stop there and turn it to Chris. Or I'm sorry, maybe it goes back to Anne.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I'm gonna then follow right up on what Miriam was talking about and actually then share some results from this initial deployment that we have going on with SoCal Gas. This was just launched in August of 2021 after about 18 months of development. And we started initial marketing only in November, so it's not a very long time yet, but we already got some really exciting, promising indications of what we're able to do with this loan product. Some of this Miriam touched on. This is instant online underwriting. It takes about a minute for a consumer who wants to pay for an online purchase with ecoFinancing to submit their application and get a response online so that they can check out using that ecoFinancing loan or pay with a credit or debit card. We only offer ecoFinancing on efficient products that qualify under the GoGreen Home program. So that's really important. You cannot finance something that's not efficient and which would jack up your energy bills unnecessarily. We can lend all the way down to $200, all the way up to $5,000 under this microloan pathway, as Miriam mentioned. And yeah, low interest rates. The affordable monthly payments is the key thing that the consumers care about based on participant surveys that we've done. And that's a combination of the low APR and the long loan term. Again, we can serve people with credit scores down to 580 who normally wouldn't even have access to any other form of credit like a credit card. And they can also, with these small monthly payments, help build good credit and improve their credit score. So like $1,000 appliance you see on the upper washing machine here that's shown, it's about $1,100 with an instant discount that we've negotiated with the retail partner. But for an appliance of $1,100, the monthly payment is under $25. And so that's really affordable and a really good way to build credit. So just to show you the structure here, and it's also very similar in our work with NYSERDA, the state energy office there. Basically, Energy is the marketplace merchant. So when I talk about a marketplace, think about Amazon, that's a marketplace. So the Energy marketplace is a place where you can look at 40 different product categories that use energy, and you can find the most efficient products. And we work together like Amazon does with what we call marketplace sellers, like Best Buy, Water Heater Warehouse, and others, to actually fulfill the orders. So Best Buy, if you order a refrigerator, Best Buy will deliver the order to you and do installation and haul away services if you've included that in your shopping transaction. So all those services are bundled and makes it really quick and easy for people to make these complicated purchases. And then behind it on the financing side, as Miriam already mentioned, we do have a fintech partner for loan servicing purposes, and that particular fintech partner for this deployment in California is backed by a credit union out of Washington State called Coastal, but the capital could come from anyone. It could, it can come from the biggest banks or from credit unions or other sources. And CATFA's there, Miriam's organization, as the provider of the loan loss reserve. So let me see time-wise. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to do a demo for you a little bit to show you how the site looks to the consumer. We will share with you or you can note it down. We will share with you the URL. It's publicly available, so anybody can click around and see how it's working. And so I'm going to have to get out of this quickly. and get into another window. Okay. So are you all seeing this? Okay, excellent. So this is a SoCal gas marketplace. I mentioned we have 40 categories, but because this is a gas only utility, you see we have a limited selection of HVAC, lawn and garden, home and office, typical white goods, kitchen, dishwashers, ranges, laundry, appliances, and also generators. And some of these you see that you can actually buy directly on the site, the ones with the shopping cart. And some of them also, in this case, have rebates. So I'll show you how all these things can play together. So let's just look at the washer category. And you'll see it looks very much like a typical online shopping site. You can filter initially by what you're looking for. If you're looking for a front loading machine, you can filter for that initially. So there were 246 washers. And then there are 35 of those are front loaders. And you see here that we also give, and you can also select by brand or capacity or other things that you care about, Wi-Fi connected, whatever, or where you want to buy it. But in this view, you'll see that we make automated recommendations that are based on your preferences. So the more filters you set, these recommendations will change to meet your needs. And a lot of consumers don't go farther than this. They're like in a hurry to replace something that breaks. So they come here and they just like, okay, best overall, looks good, but maybe it's actually really well priced also. So it scores 100, so maybe I'll go for that one, right? That's Samsung. And if you go in here, you will see a whole bunch of product specs, and I don't want to spend too much time on this, but you get your typical product specifications that you get on any retailer website. You get an explanation of what the energy score means, which is a 0 to 100 energy efficiency index that's updated every day. And it adjusts to the efficiency levels of all the models that are offered for sale that day. So it's dynamic based on what's on the market. So as new models come onto the market that are more efficient, the score of a certain model might decrease over time until that model is discontinued as new things enter the market. That's why it's a really good complement to the Energy Star label. We also give some gamification things here, like if everybody bought this particular washer, it would be save enough energy to power New York for a year, which is, then you see it's pretty significant. It's not huge savings per unit, but it can add up. We also have a calculator here, so you can see the impact on your bill if you chose this model or a typical model. And you can personalize that as well to how much laundry you do a week. We have default tariffs in here, energy tariffs that we get from our partners, but you can also customize it if you're on a special rate. You can also change the cost period that you want to look at. The other thing you can do is you can look at what we call clear cost, which is the total cost of ownership. And then you can get a sense of, how much is the purchase price versus the operating cost. And you can also optimize based on clear cost. You can sort by clear cost as well, if you want. And then we also show you what your monthly payment would be and how much energy savings per month you would get. And so what your total out-of-pocket expense would be every month. And if you compare that to what you would have to plunk down if you bought a product without financing, it's a big difference. So this model, it was $1,100, or no, wait, this one was $800, right? So instead of paying $800 or putting $800 on your credit card that you pay off over time, maybe, or buying something used that would probably cost you at least, $100, $200 if it's in good shape. This is a really appealing offer for people who don't have access to credit. You also get other information down here where you can buy it at other retailers if you don't want to buy it through this site. Okay, so that's just real quick. And then you see over here on the right side, here's the manufacturer, the MSRP for the model, which is $1,125. But we've negotiated a special discount, in this case through Best Buy. So this washer is available for $325 less. And we instantly just layer that in. That could also be a rebate funded through like the state energy program or something that could also go in here. And then you can, like I said, include installation services, which in the case of this washer would be $0. They would do it for free. And you can also say, I want to have my old one recycled. And if you're doing a low income program, we can also make the installation and haul away costs at no cost to the consumer. For example, if there's government money available, we can just pay those costs for those customers. And that's something that we're actually going to be doing with NYSERDA. And then you basically add it to your cart. You see here that Best Buy is going to fulfill it. Once you add it to your cart and validate yourself and decide that you want to pay for it, like I said, you could pay with a credit card, debit card, but if you decide you want to pay with ecoFinancing, then you go submit your application. Like I said, all you have to add in addition there is your social security number and your date of birth. And within a minute, you get an answer whether your application was declined or approved. Then you get sent back to the site and have the option to check out with that loan. So that's what it is. It's pretty slick. If you want to note it right now, it's just marketplace.socalgas.com, or we can send it along afterwards. Now I'm going to go back to the deck. Oops. Okay, moving right along. And so what we're seeing, and this is from a participant survey, we are seeing that people really who are taking out these eco-financing loans wouldn't have been able to buy the efficient product they did without it. In this data set here, nearly 70% said they needed eco-financing, and only less than 10% said that they would have been able to buy the product without it. So definitely filling a gap here. And these are just some results that we have to date, with more coming in all the time. You know, with these different payment options, we're seeing that 87% of people are actually purchasing with eco-financing. And that's even higher than maybe we would have expected, but it's, when you think about it, not surprising given how many people are really struggling these days. And these financers, they're not just small items like $200 air purifiers. They are major domestic appliances like washers and dryers, and even pairs, washer dryer pairs, people are financing. And the very exciting thing I know for Miriam as well as me is that the vast majority of these loans are going to underserved borrowers. And in our case, in the case of the GoGreen Home program, that's defined as people who are at less than 120% of area median income, or who are credit challenged, meaning they have credit scores below that 640 threshold where they normally wouldn't have credit. So this is, from our perspective, really successful. And I'll dive into that more in the next slide. We also are able to reach renters. Who would have thought, right? I know that that's a really hard to reach segment for most energy efficiency programs, and many lower income people are renters. So this is also great that we can reach them. And we're also seeing, because the eco-financing is tied to efficient products, we're seeing that 91% of the financed products have an energy score of 80 or above. And the products that are eligible under the GoGreen Home program, which is often using Energy Star as the eligibility criteria, those scores go all the way down to, I think, in the 40s here, but people are gravitating towards the high scoring products, which is phenomenal. And I wrote down here the last bullet. I showed you that we can integrate discounts from any source. However, what we're seeing really interestingly is in the case of SoCalGas, they have washers with no rebates, and they have dryers, gas dryers with rebates. And what we're seeing is roughly equal numbers of purchases of unrebated washers and rebated dryers. So our simplistic conclusion is that rebates are not really needed. And if you think about it, it kind of makes sense, because if you have a $15 monthly payment, adding in a $70 rebate would probably reduce the monthly payment by less than $1. So once you're able to get the affordable monthly payments, the additional thing is really something that I think should really be targeted more at like interest rate buy downs or things or bigger incentives for the customers who really need the help most, but not for everybody. And just final thing here, we're finding also through surveys that the thing that the consumers really care about is the low monthly payment. Can I make that payment? That's number one. They also like that there's no hard credit check here, which would hurt their credit score if it's already a little bit fragile. And they like the fact that it's an online process, which who would have thought? I know, like at least a few years ago, there was a lot of thought that low income qualified people don't have access to the internet and things like that. But these times have really changed significantly. And last slide, I think for me is just to call out the equity impact of this eco-financing loan product. You saw before the 86% number, and has these two components. It has the low and moderate income, meaning somebody defined as somebody in a census tract with an AMI less than 120%. And you see though, even within that, 1/3 of people have an AMI less than have a census tract with AMI less than 80%. So again, we're really reaching an underserved segment. And on the credit challenge side, this is really, people with 820 plus credit scores don't need eco-financing. People with credit scores below 640 really need it. And they're by far the dominant segment that the loans are going to. Okay, and with that, I'll pass on to Chris, who's going to talk about exciting plans for the New York marketplace.
Great, thanks, Anne, and thanks everyone for having me with you here today. And Anne, just a quick check: are you advancing my slides?
Yes, if you want me to.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. I was going to do it, but then it's too complicated for me. So let's not fix what's not broken. So what I wanted to do this afternoon was to talk a little bit about what we're doing in New York State and why we're doing it with respect to increasing access to energy efficient appliances and solutions for low and moderate income households. And so Anne and Miriam kind of gave you a lot of insight in terms of what's happening in California and how Energy is really kind of supporting the work that is happening out there. And in New York, we're undertaking a similar approach and are piloting an exciting new opportunity to kind of think about how an interactive marketplace can kind of help us increase our energy affordability and access goals. So Anne, could you go to the next slide, please? So a little bit of context, we talked a little bit about kind of like the broader policy framework at the outset of the call today, but similarly to what's happening nationally with Justice 40, New York State has its own set of kind of big climate goals. The Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act is really kind of pushing our energy and climate goals to the point where we are kind of are expected to achieve an 85% reduction of carbon emissions across the economy by 2050. And there are a lot of important mileposts between now and then. And they keep getting laid out every few months. So like earlier this year, our Governor Hochul, presented a very ambitious energy and climate agenda within her State of the State. And one of the really important, goals that really caught our attention is, this goal to create 2 million climate-friendly homes by the end of this decade. So really looking at, electrifying at least 1 million homes and getting another 1 million homes electrification ready. So it's going to be, really important for us to, find solutions for low and moderate income households to help them not only, electrify, but even to kind of like reduce energy consumption across the board. So really important kind of driver, kind of right there. In addition to that, NYSERDA and New York State in general, we have had, the luxury of, having a large rate base in the state, and we've been able to fund our low and moderate income programs, quite healthily, over the last, decade or so. And, at this point, we're spending about $1 billion a year in energy efficiency or energy bill payment assistance for income eligible households, but we're still only hitting, about 1% of eligible households every year when it comes to energy efficiency retrofits. And so, we need to figure out a way to, increase adoption of energy efficiency solutions for those households. And obviously, as we look at where we are today in terms of, what is the driver of kind of increased consumption, appliances and plug loads we see as a really, kind of great opportunity to kind of help address efficiency at the at the household level, but then also as we're thinking about electrifying, like we want to bring kind of base load, plug load down as much as possible anyway. So we're really kind of interested in expanding our ability to reach households when it comes to appliances and plug load, and then obviously we want to catch households before they're kind of just replacing at the end of life. So all of that to say, our current approach is not going to be, sufficient to meet our broader, energy, climate, and equity goals that we have as a state. So we're really kind of excited to kind of think about how to innovate and looking at how to kind of reduce barriers and increase opportunities to for low-income households, low and moderate income households to make, efficient purchases, with affordable financing options. And this is kind of, where we're partnering with NRV, and we'll go to the next slide, please, Anne. We'll talk about kind of what we're doing with the statewide LMI marketplace. So over the last few years, at NYSERDA, we've been exploring and piloting different approaches to increasing access to clean energy solutions for low and moderate income households. And we released a very broad and open market development PON or funding opportunity, and we were able to select NRV to pilot this online marketplace through that PON, and we call it Innovative Market Strategies at NYSERDA. And we're really targeting low and moderate income households and disadvantaged communities. So similar to the Justice 40 objectives of delivering benefits to disadvantaged communities, New York State has a very similar and almost exact same set of requirements that we need to deliver, at a minimum 35% of the benefits of our clean energy investments to disadvantaged communities. And we have a goal of 40%. And so, we're currently kind of strategizing how are we going to do this in a way that's equitable, in a way that is kind of really meeting the needs of households and residents within those communities. And so, we're looking at this opportunity as one of the solutions to help us get there. So essentially, what we're piloting here is kind of a statewide kind of platform with the idea that we'll look to kind of grow this over time. And so as part of the piloting, not only are we talking about doing the market tests, but the NRV team will be also working with NYSERDA on a go-to-market strategy for a longer term, broader intervention. And one of the kind of interesting points here to kind of flag is through this pilot. So not only would we be, kind of leveraging kind of the purchasing, kind of the decision for low-income households to purchase appliances, but we're also leveraging a loan loss reserve as a credit enhancement to offer eco-financing. So at a minimum, 35% of the portfolio must be to people with low credit scores or to low income or otherwise income qualified households. So an important kind of flag here in terms of how we're leveraging our low interest financing. And then, we're also kind of taking the next step to think about how this approach can enhance existing retrofit programs. We have a very large retrofit program in New York called Empower New York, which we serve around 16,000 households a year with energy efficiency upgrades. The appliance kind of component of that program has always been a challenge in terms of administrative complexity and lack of choice of the clients that we're serving. So we're looking at this pilot of this marketplace as an opportunity to test kind of an enhancement to our Empower program in a direct install component of that program to basically provide clients that we're serving with an ability to kind of select which appliances that we would be incentivizing or subsidizing for them. We'll go to the next slide, please, Anne. So in terms of the ecosystem here, so there are a number of partners that are involved. So obviously, we talked about NRV. So Anne and her team are operating the platform. They're kind of doing the digital marketing. They have the choice engine technology and really kind of the ability for the clients and customers to kind of look at kind of what's possible in terms of the appliances and kind of their level of efficiency and help them kind of make an informed choice. At NYSERDA, we're obviously kind of providing the initial kind of funding to pilot the initiative. We're providing the credit enhancement, which I mentioned, and then we'll be doing a lot of marketing and kind of coordination with our existing Empower program to make sure that we're kind of driving participation and adoption. We also have one as part of this ecosystem as well. So they are kind of the eco-financing loan originator. They're doing underwriting, servicing, and then Best Buy is the marketplace vendor. So as Anne mentioned in the California example, Best Buy will also be doing kind of a similar offering a similar set of services in this pilot. And to the point that Anne mentioned, I was just going to kind of flag, kind of similar example, a high efficiency washing machine, through kind of this approach, rather than kind of a customer having to lay out the full amount of the cost of the appliance at the start. We're looking at a low kind of monthly payment that would be affordable for the client. Next slide, please. And so this gives you just kind of a sense from a customer's kind of point of view. So when you go to the marketplace, this is kind of what you will see. Next slide. And so I touched on this a little bit earlier, and maybe just to kind of like emphasize this, because I know a number of other states are in a similar position with weatherization and energy efficiency programs. And again, we're kind of looking at this as a potential for kind of enhancing the direct install component of our Empower program. So we're essentially kind of going to be providing the customers with kind of a choice. So we would provide them with a credit or otherwise a code for kind of making the purchases. They would complete the online purchase, and they'd be able to kind of add a copay. So this would provide additional options for the customer if they wanted to purchase a higher end refrigerator, for instance, than one that would be fully subsidized. They have that option. And then the marketplace fulfillment partner, in this case Best Buy, would be kind of the one that is arranging for the delivery of the appliance. Next slide, please. And I think that might be it, actually. Yep. So we'll take your questions, please.
So I have a question for the panel, and the question is, what happens to the loan if the resident moves?
Do you want to take that, Miriam?
Sure. So the the loan is not meter secured or property secured. This is just a direct agreement between a finance company and a customer. So if the customer moves, they still owe the money on the loan.
Yeah, I think that also points out that this type of eco-financing loan product is a really good complement to other things that are out there that also might have more risks. Like, you know, I know that there's been some issues with things like PACE, but, you know, jurisdictions have been able to solve some of those. But like that one is really tied to your home ownership. And so number one, it's only available to homeowners, and it is tied to your home. So if you don't make the payments, there can be things happening. Also, it's complementary for the same reason to on-bill financing programs that are tied to the meter. So both of those other programs, they pretty much require that the technologies that you're financing are tied to the building because of the way that they're paid back. Whereas this one is an unsecured consumer loan that is open to anybody, whether they're a renter or a homeowner. So I think there are just some distinctions there.
And I would also add that I think just, you know, I know consumer protection and consumer financial protection is always a big concern. I think for us, what, you know, we set the cap on these loans at $5,000. And what we've seen is the average loan has been $1,300. So a $1,300 loan, you know, repaid at, you know, $15 a month or, you know, something along those lines for 60 months, there's not a huge risk of sending somebody into insolvency if they were to move. You know, I think has been kind of our take on it, that let's, you know, because it's these lower dollar amounts, let's give people access to the financing so they can quickly upgrade to more efficient products and hopefully be saving money on their energy bills to help with those payments, you know, rather than put in a lot of controls and processes around transferability and stuff, which is just very complex.
Chris, it looks like there's a question for you in the chat box. It says, how do you determine LMI status, general eligibility for users of that marketplace?
Yeah, so in general, you know, we do income testing, and you know, that kind of establishes eligibility for like our traditional LMI programs. Because this is a pilot, we are going to either be, you know, kind of, you know, referring people that we know are income eligible, or targeting, you know, geographic specific areas that, you know, we'd make eligible for the pilot. As we kind of think about long-term implementation, you know, we'd think about, you know, how to better ensure that, you know, there are income eligible households that are, you know, going to be accessing the subsidy or the discount. I don't want to expand, but the last thing I'll say is, or I can expand, but the one thing I'll just add to this is we've been testing a number of geographic eligibility approaches in NYSERDA programs over the last year or so. And we found that, you know, if we are kind of like using very kind of, you know, tight parameters in terms of, you know, communities or census tracts with, you know, more than 75% of their households being kind of, you know, low moderate income, you know, we're seeing kind of after evaluating, you know, we're only kind of, you know, subsidizing or serving, you know, a small number of households that wouldn't otherwise be eligible. So, you know, this is another kind of approach or opportunity for us to take this approach and test out what a geographic eligibility, you know, process could look like. And so we'll be doing evaluation on this on the back end as well.
Great, thank you.
So if a state was to implement a rebate program, would the rebates, do you recommend the rebates being directed to the individuals or to the lenders?
Maybe I can take that one. I think what it's not so, well, So yeah, you can do a rebate, which reduces the purchase price, or you could do an interest rate buy down, which reduces, for example, we're having this conversation in California right now about augmenting the current approach with an interest rate buy down so that income qualified people, which would also be geographical income qualification, the one that used by Miriam's program, that these people would be able to finance their purchase at no interest cost to them. And so, yeah, that in that case, you would spend the money on the interest rate buy down. And it's really interesting, and I can provide some of these calculations, but if you compare the amount of money that you'd have to spend on an interest rate buy down, it's bigger than a traditional rebate, a typical rebate that would be cost effective, but it's much less than a free direct install program would be. And so if you're really trying to target and reach as many income qualified people as possible, that's really a pretty effective way to go about it, because they're not able to participate in traditional rebate programs. And the direct install programs are quite expensive because everything is for free. There's no copay, there's no private contribution at all. And what we're seeing in this data that I showed, it's not like income qualified people or people who can't get credit cannot pay for these appliances. They can, and they are willing to, and they actually do buy these appliances all the time. They're just not being served through the traditional programs.
So I've got another question for you guys. I think you touched on this, off and on through your presentations. But how does eco-financing compare to PACE and on-bill financing? Could you kind of touch on that a bit more, some highlights there?
Do you want to do, Miriam?
Oh, yeah, I can go and then turn it over to you, Ann. So, I mean, PACE has, so I think a lot of people are familiar with the challenges with residential PACE. I think it does have a lot of promise if it's done right and regulated correctly, but PACE deals are really only kind of practical for very large projects. There has to, the loan has to be recorded with the county. There's a lot of transaction costs. And so it just doesn't make sense to use an instrument like PACE to replace equipment. Especially because equipment replacement usually happens reactively. Something's broken, somebody needs a new refrigerator now, whereas if somebody's planning a solar project or a energy efficiency project, that's sort of something that they're scoping and bidding with a contractor. So it's almost, I feel, just like a completely different purpose. And then we've talked a little bit about, there's no property securing with these loans. And then with on-bill, so in California, we don't have yet on-bill finance for residential. On-bill finance using the utilities capital or on-bill repayment using private capital is for commercial, for small business and commercial. There is some movement right now in California through a clean energy financing proceeding. There's a lot of interest in a tariff on-bill type program that would be kind of meter secured financing for energy efficiency projects where the utility is the counterparty to the customer, but it's not really based on customers' credit. It's based on the kind of collective credit of all the utility customers. And so there's a charge that's recouped through energy savings. And I think once again, we're going to see, I think there's a lot of interest in tariff on bill, and I think there's a lot of potential. I think we're going to see that for larger projects that include some weatherization or insulation type, some of the deep savings that can be obtained, or for some equipment that might be larger, like, heat pump, HVAC systems. Whereas, again, with eco-financing, what we're talking about is a customer just on their own saying, my dryer broke, I need a new one. I don't want to just go to Home Depot and get the cheapest thing out there, that I can plunk cash down. I actually want to invest in something that's going to save energy and save me money. And here's how I can do it in a reasonable way. And, I think that's kind of what we're looking at. And hopefully people will be repeat customers and then come back when they need to upgrade, their washing machine and so forth.
Yeah, and I would just add on 2 things. So both of those other models, they are only products are eligible that are tied to the building, because if you move out of your dwelling, the tariffed one stays with the new tenant. So you can't be taking the equipment with you, because it wouldn't be fair to the new tenant. I mean, and the other thing is they're also both only available to building owners, or on-bill financing, you might be able to do it with the permission of the building owner, but with PACE, certainly not. You have to be the owner. And so we're open to everybody, and you also don't need special legislation or resolutions from local government in order to do this. It can be statewide.
So financing for tenants is something new to me, and I'm just trying to figure out what type of federal funding do you think might be suited for financing to tenants?
So I know that I hope NASEO will chime in on this question too, but just my personal quick read on it is that there are 3 possibilities with the existing infrastructure bill that was just passed, the IIJA. I think we could use the energy efficiency and conservation block grants, which specifically talks about financing and energy efficiency. So that looks like a bucket, that 500 million, I guess it is. There's also the state energy program that obviously you guys are all familiar with, that should support projects that lead to energy savings by consumers, especially low-income consumers. And then there's the revolving loan fund. I forget what it's called now. Sorry, the revolving loan, just the revolving loan fund facility. It's $250 million that could also be possible. It might be a little bit more complicated to go after. So that's just my superficial thoughts. And we've also been talking to a number of states since we attended the October NASEO meeting. And they're starting to have thoughts too about how to fund this type of statewide rollout. So maybe other people can chime in.
Sam, not to put you on the spot, but is there anything that NASEO might want to add to that?
So when she talks about the 3 pots of money here, obviously the 2 most flexible are going to be the SEP and EECBG funds. The nice thing about what's going on with the infrastructure bill for EECBG is that they amended the rules for financing with EECBG. So they basically mirror SEP, which allows for a lot more flexibility in using this funds for financing than before. The Insulate Act is going to be a little bit more challenging. The key thing here that we've been stressing over the past several months is going to be these Buy American provisions. Probably many of you are familiar with the fact that, with the ARA funds, that you're able to sometimes get waivers. We are understanding that with the current administration, the Buy American provisions are going to be very, very tight. There's basically almost no chance you're going to get a waiver. So that is going to make things a bit more challenging on that end for the revolving loan fund capital. And the other thing that's tough is that, it's just not quite the same as ARA. This is a small amount of money compared to the money you receive for revolving loan funds for the ARA days. So that's also something you need to take into consideration when thinking through the possible uses of that money as what you're going to receive. And I'll turn it back to you guys. We are at 5 p.m. so we may have to wrap it up.
Okay, is there any additional questions for the panelists from folks on the other side? Okay, Well, not seeing any. Thank you guys so much for your time today, and Miriam and Chris, and for everybody being on the line with us. If you have questions or need follow-up information, be sure to reach out to any of us or Sam, and we'll get those answers to you.
Thank you for the opportunity, and thanks for being here, everyone.
Thank
Thanks
you.
all.
Yeah, thanks you guys.